Hey, broken earphones. What's up? Yeah, it's broken. I've been using it for like over a year now, I think, and finally I can't hear on one side. And now I have to get a new one. Yay. It's the Culture Detective here investigating your favorite TV shows, and today is something special because not only is today the first day of grade 12, my last year in high school, but also I'm making the 600th video on my channel. Yes, I don't have a life, apparently. It's 600. But yeah, anyway, I am just going to man up and do a review of Breaking Bad final season. Hell yeah. And also, I'm a little tired today because this morning I didn't get much sleep. I slept for like 1 hour or so. Maybe I didn't. I don't know if I've slept or not. Anyway, I'm gonna only review the first half of season 5 because it is actually split in half, even though both these seasons are also included as one season, but really it's 2 seasons, each with 8 episodes. But yeah, I actually watched the final season of Breaking Bad 2 years ago, but I didn't want to do a review on it that fast. I wanted to wait until I have more subs so that when I come out with this video, more people will realize that Breaking Bad is one of the greatest TV shows of all times. Period. Season 4 ended in a very high note. It was insane. There are a lot of amazing episodes in season 4 already. Crawl Space, Face Off are some of the best episodes ever, period. And before going into season 5, I had extremely high expectations. Like, extremely. And I know I shouldn't have that high of expectations because if I expect too much, it's gonna disappoint me. But to my surprise, it lived up to my expectations, and maybe even more. It exceeded my expectations, despite how high they were. And I think the reasons why Breaking Bad keeps on getting better and better every season is because of its great writing team. Vince Gilligan created the series, and he's actually a genius. And also everyone in the writing team and the production team are amazing. Even the musical score by Dave Porter is just amazing. This is some really intense, suspenseful, electronic beat kind of soundtrack, and it just makes the experience way more enjoyable. And yeah, anyway, I'm gonna do a quick recap. If you haven't watched seasons 1 to 4, you don't have to go through this recap, but basically, Walter White was an underpaid high school teacher who taught chemistry, who had a shitty life. He didn't have enough money. His son had cerebral palsy. People are laughing at him. People are laughing at his son. And he decided to cook crystal meth with one of his former students, Jesse Pinkman, after he realized he had lung cancer. So he really needed money. And he went from like low level street drug dealer, kind of shitty ones, and he kept on climbing higher and higher and higher, and becoming more and more ambitious because his meth is actually really, really good. But every time he tries to climb higher, he also runs into an obstacle. And every time he does that, he has to get rid of them somehow. And every obstacle gets harder. At first we have Crazy 8, and then we have Tuco, and then we have other side storylines like Jesse's girlfriend, Jane. And the worst thing about it all is that Walter White's brother-in-law, Hank Strader, works at the DEA, and they actually know about Heisenberg, who's actually Walter White. And then after that, Walter White started to work for Gus Gustavo Fring, who is one of the most top-notch millionaire criminals in the world, who's secretly working in a restaurant chain, who secretly owns a fast food restaurant chain called Los Pollos Hermanos. And then after that, a bunch of things happened. I don't want to spoil them, but they're crazy. And Walter's wife, Skylar, realized he was a drug dealer in season 4 and actually tried to help him keep the secret, but was still kind of afraid of him at the same time. Meanwhile, Hank was also kinda onto Gus Fring for a very long time for being a secret drug dealer, and Walt solved this problem somehow. Also, a lawyer named Saul Goodman and his assistant Mike Ehrmantraut were helping Walt and Jesse to get out of difficult situations, and they are amazing characters as well. Anyway, we have episode 1, Live Free or Die. The teaser was epic. Walt was already 52 years old, and he had a beard and hair, facial hair all over his face. It was like a flash forward, basically. And he bought a lot of guns. Anyway, now we're into the main part of the story. Other than the not so interesting storyline of Skylar and Ted, the whole episode is frickin' awesome. It started right off of the events of the season 4 finale Face Off. Walt cleaned things up and teamed up with Mike, and they found an idea to destroy Gus's laptop, which has evidence of Walter White and Jesse Pinkman being criminals, so they have to come up with a plan to destroy all the evidence, and they actually executed the plan on the same episode. If I were a writer, a pretty average TV show writer, I would probably put the plan execution on episode 2, but instead the whole thing happened in just one episode, clean and neat, and episode 2 brings a whole new chapter, and that's why this episode is actually really exciting for me. And also the scene where also again, I don't want to spoil too much for you, but basically they use magnets to destroy Gus's laptop. And after the test worked, Jesse Pinkman yelled, "Yeah, bitch! Magnets!" And it is really funny and iconic and amazing. And I also really love that Jesse Pinkman serves as both comic relief, but also trauma in the show at the same time. But the darkest and coldest character in the show right now is actually Walter White, who is becoming more powerful and threatening and evil, and I also really, really love that. What I really love about Breaking Bad is that Walter White goes from a weak person to a very evil and ambitious person, an egotistic person in the span of the entire show. It's a slow, gradual transition, and I just really appreciate that. Not many TV shows, actually none of the TV shows do that. Nonetheless, the scenes where they destroyed the evidence, it's fantastic. It's brilliant. Not only is it science related, but also it just has some really cool action. The writing is on point, and I have no complaints for episode 1. It's a great starter. After that, it's episode 2, Madrigal. It started off with a very weird and confusing teaser that's almost completely irrelevant to the story, but it still manages to hook you in. Anyway, Madrigal. In Madrigal, a company, a German guy named Mr. Schuler was tasting some sauce, and then a woman told him that the policeman came, and he was terrified, so he's probably connected to Gus somehow. And then we have another cool little montage where Walt and Jesse were finding the cigarette that contained the ricin in Jesse's house, the ricin poison. And Walt set up a trick where he created a fake ricin cigarette and put it in Jesse's robot cleaner, so Jesse didn't suspect a thing. Again, I really like the back and forth tension between Walt and Jesse. Next, we have Hank and his DEA partner Gomez interrogating people that are suspected to be connected to Gus, including Mike. So that's actually really interesting. The show also introduced a new character, Lydia, who was a woman working in Madrigal and who was connected to Gus and was really afraid of what's going on because Gus was killed. I'm sorry if you haven't seen season 4. And after some troubleshoot, when Lydia hoped Mike would kill the rest of Gus's guys, Mike told Walt that he's in. Which means Walt, Jesse, and Mike would start a new drug empire despite all the craziness they have experienced. And overall, even though this episode isn't as eventful as other episodes on this season, I still think it's a really solid episode that has a lot of potential for exploring. Moving over to episode 3, Hazard Pay, where Walt and Jesse continued their business as professional as possible, while Skylar was still having a hard time. The On a Clear Day montage was quite excellent actually, with its dreamy music. We see Walt and Jesse cook in a very professional way. They cook meth in houses when people think the houses are being cleaned up by pest control people, but really it's Walt and Jesse cooking meth. And even though Walt was really dissatisfied with the money he's getting, I think they had enough. Now Walt is crossing the line. The new character of Todd is introduced, who is played by Jesse Plemons, and it is a pretty cool. He has a pretty cool introduction scene. Also, I want to say that I wrote this script 2 years ago, so there are a lot of grammatical mistakes, and I'm probably missing a few important points, so forgive me. Anyway, Jesse Plemons' character Todd has a pretty cool introduction scene, how he approached Walter White even though he's told not to. I also love how the show keeps bringing up the past events, like Jesse mentioning Gail in a conversation, and they never acted like the past never have happened. The past really haunt them for the rest of their lives, for the foreseeable future, and that's another thing that I really like about Breaking Bad, is that it's consistent. And all in all, it's another amazing episode. It isn't too dramatic or insane or eventful, but it has some solid plot points, some really interesting characters, and also some nice editing and cinematography. I enjoy it a lot. Next up, it's episode 451. Ironically, this is the 50th Breaking Bad episode, and to be honest, this episode is way better than I've expected. Way better. Skylar was still skeptical of Walt's safety, and she did insane things just to separate Walt from Walter Jr. and Holly, who are the kids of Walt and Skylar. And, Breaking Bad's writers managed to put all these family issues and relationship storylines into the story about drugs and gangs and crimes, and yet they still feel engaging because the characters are relatable. And I don't know why, but I was actually happy for Walt when he's having fun with Walter Jr. Like, they were having a great time, and it's just great to see that. And Jesse is also a really, really great character. I love how kind and caring he actually was, even though on the surface he tries his best to act tough. And he was actually starting to cooperate with Walt. And I'm expecting some more insane drama for the next episodes, because people always talk about the train heist on episode 5, which leads to episode 5, Dead Fright. What a cool title. What a cool episode title. And it has gotten a well-deserved 9.7 on IMDb when I was watching the episode, even though right now all the Breaking Bad episodes are downvoted by IMDb users for some reason. But yeah, Dead Fright, amazing episode. It is written by George Mastras, who also wrote episodes like Crazy Handful of Nothing, Grilled, and Crawl Space. What a portfolio. Again, the writers loved to keep it simple. Walt's family versus Walt's team of criminals. Skylar was still being such an annoying, hateable character, even though she still has a lot of depth. She insisted to keep the kids away from Walt. Meanwhile, because of the outage of methylamine, Walt, Jesse, and Mike decided to pull off a great stunt. That sounds ridiculous at first, but practical and actually very impressive at the end. You know, it is one thing to witness an incredibly impressive yet logical action sequence that takes place for minutes, and it's another thing that you watch the action sequence, you're super excited, and then suddenly something really dark and tragic just punches you in the face, and you just sit there with complete shock. And this is what happened on this episode, and I feel hurt. I feel hurt after the ending. I really do. So did Jesse. Anyway, I'm giving a spoiler alert. If you haven't watched the episode, you can skip it. Look at the comments. There are timestamps. Anyway, on the previous episode, I predicted that the writers wanted to make Lydia be the one who bugged the barrel of methylamine, and the writers probably wanted her dead earlier, but then the writer for this episode wanted to keep her alive for a little longer, and the way the writer George Masters did it is actually really clever. And then we have the monumental, the iconic one and only train heist from Breaking Bad. And yes, a train heist. It's a really cool action sequence that took place for a long time and had multiple phases. There is the build up, the climax, and the twist, and a suspenseful ending. It's just wow. So there was a train full of methylamine, and Mike got someone to stop a car on the track to stop the train. The guy with the broken car then told the two people in the train to help him in order to distract them from seeing Walt, Jesse, and Todd. Then Walt, Jesse, and Todd extracted methylamine from the cart and inserted water to replace it. It's pretty convoluted, but they somehow pulled it off. And then suddenly, another car showed up out of nowhere and helped clearing the track. So the two train guys were back onto the train and it's about to start running again. Mike told Walt to abort mission, but Walt was determined. And after Walt got 1,000 gallons, he told Jesse and Todd to come back down. And Jesse reset the scene immediately and went under the train as the train was moving, and Todd jumped off the train later. And Walt and the guys somehow pulled it off really smoothly, and it's amazing. It's honestly an amazing action sequence. They succeeded. And then all of a sudden, at the very, very end, a kid showed up with a motorbike. And at first it was awkward. And then Todd suddenly pulled out a gun and shot him. And I just went from smiling and cheering for the guys to being shocked. Wow, in a matter of seconds. And also, I feel like the soundtrack composer for Breaking Bad is not praised enough. Dave Porter. He had this 9-minute long track for the action sequence for Dead Fright, and it's this incredibly brilliant dubstep infused electronic score, and it sort of imitates the sounds of a train sort of chugging, and it's just so full of textures, and it's so tense, and it's just amazing. Anyway, over to episode 6, Buyout. After the tragedy at the end of Dead Fright, a new storyline quickly emerges, and that storyline is also very entertaining. Vince Gilligan and the writers were really on a roll. There are various great scenes on this episode, from Jesse's awkward dinner with Walt and Mike throwing off the DEA, from Walt's quote on why did he want to run this business, to Walt's clever escape. A really underrated episode, in fact. I really love the excellent writing, how intricate and yet realistic the story is. But yeah, in all seriousness, the scene where Walter White escaped the room was another purely brilliant scene. And what I love about Breaking Bad, the show, is that they keep on giving us these scenes where the characters are in a very tense situation, in a very terrible situation, but every time it's a little different. That's why every single beat in the show feels different. They're they're unique, and it's incredibly creative that the writers would, write all these scenes where things just twist and turn. And also, what I really love is that the end of a storyline creates another storyline, and it just goes on and on and on. This story can never end. Then it's episode 7, Say My Name, which has a grand opening scene where Walt had to negotiate with Declan, another mafia boss, with full confidence and ego. And because, Walt and Jesse and Todd, they made so much mess, but they need to deal it, they need to get money from it, they need to profit from it. So they had to give it to Declan. Declan does the distribution and they get the money, and that's the deal. But Walter White was so egotistic, he told Declan to say his name. He said, "Say my name." And Declan was like, You're Heisenberg, the guy who killed Gus. And Walter White was like, "You're goddamn right." That scene... I know Walter White is getting more and more evil, but yet I still root for him because he's such a great character with so much depth, and we have been through so much with him. We understand where he's going from and where he came from, and I, for some reason, really support him. Until the ending of the episode. Until the ending. Anyway, we have a lot of intense scenes in this episode with the DEA up Mike's ass. I thought the whole DEA storyline would be less interesting than all the other storylines, but still, it's getting more and more intense and more interesting, actually. Hank was actually really trying his best to bust Mike, and both Hank and Mike are great characters who are amazing at their jobs. And then we have the ending of the episode, where something incredibly sad and tragic and shocking happened. Another thing, and it's even more sad and tragic than that one at the end of Dead Fright, in my opinion. And again, I don't know how, I don't know why, but every time at the end of a Breaking Bad episode in season 5, I just go, and I just try my best to not give in to my temptations to take a sneak peek of the next episode. But anyway, I'm giving a spoiler alert. Since the Hank and the DEA was trying to catch Mike so hard, Mike had nothing to do but to escape and leave town. So Walt volunteered to help Mike take his bag, which contained a passport, money, and a gun. Mike let Walt take his bag, and Mike letting Walt take his bag was already a bad decision because Walt was a very irrational and kind of delusional person. So Walt got the bag and he gave it back to Mike. And at the same time, he also wanted something from Mike, and it was the list of 9 names that were people who knew about Gus's operation. Mike refused to give him the names and got into the car. And then Walt pulled out the gun and shot Mike. And it was just this really unpredictable thing. Like, no music, no build-up, just happened out of nowhere. And then Mike left the car. The car crashed, and Mike left the car. And then, in a matter of seconds, Walt realized that he fucked up. He shouldn't have done it. He could have asked Lydia for the names. And then he went to the grass field nearby a river, and Mike and Walt was like, sorry, I shouldn't have shot you. And Mike said, shut the fuck up and let me die in peace. And then he fell to his death, succumbing to his wound. I was really shocked, and I couldn't believe that Mike just died like that. His death wasn't even worth it. It just pisses me off that his death could have been avoided so easily. But he died because of how irrational and impulsive and egotistic and stupid Walt was. And that's when Walt really really became the villain. You know, Mike Ehrmantraut, the man who Saul hired to help Jesse clean up, who gave Jesse a lot of good advices, who stood up for Gus, was really smart and was trying really hard to throw off the DEA and live a peaceful life because he's actually a great person. But at the end, Walt just shot him and he died. Wow. Wow. You know, not many TV shows can put me in such a shocked state for such a long time. But the season is not over. At last, it's episode 8, Gliding Overall. Another great and epic episode that's also very ominous and worrying. The montages are excellent as always, and Walt had made an important decision, and the ending was basically the biggest oh shit moment in the history of television. But it was a shame that before watching the episode, I accidentally saw some spoilers in the internet. So for your sake, if you want to enjoy the show in peace, skip the spoilers. You know, it's for your own good. But yeah, I'm giving a spoiler alert because this episode is insanely good. Really dark, really evil. It gets heavier, it gets more dramatic, and it's something I've never seen on TV ever. If the jazzy montage of the killings of the 9 prisoners isn't enough, then we have the crazy ending where Hank finally, at long last, realized that Walt was Heisenberg all the time. Gail's death, Gus's explosion, the killing of the prisoners, all of it. Walter White. And no show can make a more insane cliffhanger than this show, because right after the ending, you're probably asking, what happened next? And although I knew this scene was coming, and I wasn't that surprised when I saw that scene, it was still an incredibly amazing cliffhanger, and I still really wanted to see what happened next. So overall, this is Breaking Bad's first half of season 5. While yes, there are slower moments in the first half of season 5, there are storylines that are less interesting, but still, it doesn't mean that they're not entertaining at all. At least the characters are so interesting and has so much depth that you still want to see what happens in all of the storylines. And when a storyline gets intense or interesting, it does get intense and interesting. And like, there are a lot of extremely well written scenes with extremely well written and iconic dialogue executed in such a beautiful way with perfect timing that you cannot deny are iconic scenes. The prison killing montage reminds me of The Godfather Part 2, and the other scene at the end of Say My Name really haunted me a lot, and the train heist on Dead Fright is just truly memorable and iconic, and the scenes at the beginning with the magnets, it's just fun, entertaining, yet somewhat dark. Yet there is a slight tinge of humor, yet there is a weirdly ominous vibe of impending doom. And, just these characters and these really dangerous situations, and each one of them handling in a very different way. It's just pure entertainment, yet with a lot of depth and with a lot of thought. And overall, it's not just some, random crime TV show. It actually has a lot of thought and has a lot of meaningful concepts underneath about morality and, how ambitions drive you insane, how ego drives you insane. And that's what I really love about Breaking Bad. And besides all of that, the cinematography, the editing, the music, the acting, Bryan Cranston, Aaron Paul, Jonathan Banks, Bob Odenkirk, they're all amazing. And I'm only gonna review the first half for this video. I shouldn't really give a score yet because it's just the first half. It's like the powers that be, but the first half. But you know, so far, after watching Gliding Overall, my favorite episode is actually Say My Name, and least favorite, actually Gliding Overall is, I think, equally as enjoyable, and my least favorite is Madrigal. And so far, I'm feeling a 10. A strong 9 to a light 10. Not like a perfect solid 10, but really, if you look at it, it's like at least a strong 9. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on Breaking Bad's first half, season 5? From 1 to 10, how much you rate it? Like if you like it, hate if you hate it, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching.